universities, the more I enjoy the class, the worse my grades were.
You ready?
I'm ready.
Kurt, are you good?
I'm good.
I'm good.
You're good? Very important. Okay, so I think we're going to start. We've got a lot of cool stuff to do, so we're going to try and get going really quickly. We're going to have a talk by Marlon, who's a student here, and he's made a project in Unity, using Unity and Blender. And then after that, I'm going to talk you through the demo project today, and then Frederico, who's here visiting from Brazil, who's my collaborator on the game, he's going to show you guys how to actually sort of do art stuff, because he's an artist. So. But yeah, we'll get started with Marlon.
All right. How's everybody doing? Yeah. Excited? Awesome. Yeah, so my name is Marlon. Sometimes I go by Mr. MD sometimes. And on Twitter, I guess I go by Feeble the Mighty. Yeah, I was just asked by Alec and Devin to show off my project that I worked on for a class. It was a studio project class, so I thought, why not make a game? And yeah, and so I decided to use Unity and Blender mostly because I couldn't get my actual work. We had it for school, but then we weren't allowed to have it because I wasn't in a 3D program, and so I had to use Blender, which is probably for the best because it's free. You'll use it whenever. So yeah, I don't have a whole lot of experience working with either program, but maybe this will be an example for you guys and be like, hey, this is something you can do in like 3 months while doing tons of other assignments. So yeah, let's get it. So yeah, I haven't had much experience with Unity, but I did make this game called Sumo Topplers from Winnipeg. If anybody played Winnipeg? It's pretty simple, like physics-based game, and yeah, it was really fun to put together. I also did that procrastinating from schoolwork, which is very exciting. So yeah, I made this game for school, and then I was like, yeah, why not make another fully 3D game? It'll be easy, right? From scratch, no problem. It'll just work. And yeah, well, it's not bad, but I don't know. Learning Blender was a bit of a learning curve, but yeah. So I started out with this project by just I constrained myself with just mouse, no buttons, so just moving the mouse around. That was kind of my constraint when initially thinking of the idea. And the first thing I thought of was kind of just like moving your finger up and down on the trackpad, and thinking of like, flapping. It's like kind of a flapping motion. So I thought of this idea of a character like trying to fly back up this tree. And so that's kind of where the whole idea came from. And yeah, and after that, just like crazy spiraling ideas, just, you know how it is when you're thinking of games, it's just like all these ideas just come to your head, like, oh, and the player will be this guy with wings, and he'll be flying up a tree. Oh, and he doesn't use his wings at first because he's lazy. And oh, the tree will be this living entity who like kicks him out of the tree and forcing him to use his ability that he's taken for granted. And oh, there'll be other people who don't have wings who will be hindering your progress, and like all this stuff. So I managed to somehow put all these ideas into here to varying degrees of success. But yeah, it was kind of like how I kind of like put myself into the game a little bit too, because it's kind of like I spent my life working at restaurants for a long time, not knowing what I wanted to do, and then discovering how to make games and like doing this stuff at school is kind of using my innate talents, I guess. So that was kind of fun. And then of course, and this is like, you guys are going to learn about this, prototyping. This is kind of what the game looked like before putting anything into it. I pretty much got the whole game working like this. Pretty sure some people play tested it. Kurt tried it out and he gave me some good feedback. And yeah, so basically I just put all this together first and then just threw everything, all the graphics on top of it. Yeah, and then of course after getting the game to work mostly, then it's time to learn Blender. So much fun. Yeah, there's some crazy stuff going on. Yeah, so that guy's inside out. That guy didn't get imported properly, so it's like the animations are all over the place. So yeah, it's a bit exaggerated.
It's an Escher game.
But
Escher.
Exactly. Yeah, so that was a bit of a learning curve. I won't get into the details of how to import stuff, but I don't know if anybody has any questions regarding that. I'm sure they can ask. You can ask. And so yeah, once I finally figured out a way to get the graphics in there, and I kind of like went for this like kind of low poly look, which might look just kind of shitty. I don't know. I don't know. I was pretty happy with it for just like teaching myself how to do all this stuff in like 3 months. So yeah, why don't we just take a look at what it looks like in game. So yeah, here's the little intro. We're using some graphics there. These just hanging up the top there. And then this is where you can use the mouse and you can shake them off the tree. And that's how you start the game. And then you start at the bottom of the tree, and then yeah, this is all just touch base. So if you just look around slowly, you can see up the tree. You can look around. It's all pretty, simplified graphics and stuff. And then if you give a good up-down motion, you can start flapping. You can start flying up the tree. And land on branches and look around some more. Very exciting, lots of exploration. Eating. Oh, there's a guy. This guy will try to, he'll knock you down. And you also get tired if you flap too much. I want to show you how you can defeat those guys. Also, I ran into some bugs today where, for some reason, when you land, there's a little bit of a animation glitch there. Let's see here. Oh yeah, here, I'll see if I can defeat this guy. So for some reason, I was like, oh, what other kind of mechanic can we use for this? And then I came up with this thing where you can just like stare guys down. So yeah. So it's kind of like a random section. So yeah, it's basically just like the core mechanics. You're just flying around this like cylinder, trying to get up this tree. And there, in these flying leaves here, it's kind of like a save point. You just get caught up in these leaves and you kind of go around the tree and start from there. I initially didn't have these in here, but it made it way too hard. And yeah, Devin has a good post about that on his blog. Don't make your games too hard. So yeah, but yeah, it's a almost finished game. You can get to the top. There's no end screen yet. And I don't know if I have any plans of finishing it, like polishing it up or not, because I don't know, based on very shaky code, rushed. But yeah, I don't know. Does anybody have any questions or anything?
What are the green, what are those apples?
Oh yeah, those apples will cure your fatigue. So
okay.
Cure your fatigue here, and then yeah, there we go.
Yes.
So they kind of strategically placed so you can get up the tree.
What did you find the hardest part about making this was?
The hardest part about making this was definitely getting the game to work the way I wanted was easy, but the hardest part I think was just like getting the tree there and then like putting the branches in order and like kind of making some semblance of a level. I think that was probably the hardest. Well, that Blender, obviously, like just trying to wrap my mind around how Blender imports to Unity is kind of like a tricky thing.
What version of Blender were you using?
3.4, I think.
The newest one?
No, the one before it. That's what I used to.
2.49?
0.49? Yeah, something Yeah, that one. Yeah. Any questions?
Is there anything that you would do differently if you were going to, say you're going to make this game again like tomorrow, which is going to be like a scary bot. If you had to like go again, would you approach it differently? Or?
I would. I think I have a bit more. Hopefully, I have a bit more experience. Like I think I work probably more in Blender almost than I did in Unity. So like all that stuff like rigging and putting bones in the character and all that stuff. That was a learning curve. Yeah, that was really hard. See, even this is like kind of shaky. So I'd probably, I don't know, just put more time into the graphic stuff. I think like doing the prototyping and like getting most of the game working with like just what's in Unity, and then just replacing it is like that's the way to go.
Yeah.
Even though the things like the little like green fruits and stuff like that was added almost right at the end because I was like, this is way too hard. But yeah, I'd probably focus even more like get the prototype done. Everything is done in the prototype, and then start doing this stuff.
Can you use the animation system in Blender or in Unity?
I used the Blender one.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had like the IK rigs and stuff like that, which probably people who know Blender would like look at it and laugh because it's yeah. But it was fun. I don't know. I was pretty pleased with what I managed to do. Yeah.
Get to the top.
Get to the top.
I wonder, is there a big giant burger up at the top?
No, what I wanted to do at the very end is I wanted to model like a tree, like a kind of a tree head sort of thing, and you fly up there and he like talks at you.
Oh, that's cool.
Which would be pretty cool.
Did you, like every time you play the game, is the tree like exactly the same, or are you creating it procedurally?
It's exactly the same. I thought I thought of doing it procedurally, but I was just crunching to get this done. But yeah, that would be really good to do that. Also, I didn't know like how high can you fly and like that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's true. You have to, because it could like make something that's like too high and it's like impossible to get there or something.
Yeah.
So I guess for other levels, you can make more complicated trees if you want. Work more elaborate standings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And each level gets progressively harder. That'd be really cool.
Yeah, I didn't really have any other ideas for enemies other than them just bashing me.
Stare at you.
You didn't have a multiplayer where you're just like trying to stare at you.
Staring like zero fatigue. Get tired from me.
Maybe it's just me, but do you got like some kind of effect around the like full screen effect?
Oh yeah, there's a bit of, I was messing around with the like depth of field and like lens focus blur.
Yeah, it looks like there's like a kind of like a shadowish around, like on the silhouette of things.
Yeah, I think that's the. Oh no, sorry, I'm getting caught up in things. Yeah, I think that's the depth of field or something like that.
It looks good. I like it.
Let's do this, get down. Yeah, all right.
Any other questions from Marlon? Okay.
All right, Marlon.
So if you have any other questions for Marlon about anything he was working on or Blender or anything like that, I don't know if you're free tonight, but a bunch of us are going to go to the King's Head after and get beers and just talk about stuff, so
Yeah,
we can chat about stuff there. So does everyone already have the project files? Oh god.
Let's do it.
Do things
Underhand.
All right. So this is a folder. You're gonna have to open it in Unity, you're gonna have to open up Unity and then open the folder. Yeah, that's our Twitter information. Today Devin is just gonna be sitting amongst you. Yeah, he's not doing anything, he's lazy. Yeah, he's a lazy bum. Okay. So does everyone have this project open already, or does anyone need help getting it open, or like that? No? So the content in this little thing that we're doing is dying. The content in the example project today comes from a project that Federico and I are working on called Alone in Dreams. So I was just going to throw up a URL for that, but apparently my laptop is freaking out instead. So
Hey, can you move to the right
fix
a
that
little?
first.
Hey, Alec, can you move this way a little bit too?
Oh yeah, sure.
Now open the trap door.
What's going? Can you move even more? It's a little bit more. A little bit more.
I'll get that.
We got it. Okay.
Okay, let's try this again. The theme of my talk is searching. Yeah, so it wants to change resolution when I do this. It's annoying. Yes, so this is the URL for our Tumblr if you want to find out more about this project. You'll get to play around with the player model and a bunch of other little things. We've got the prototype blocks that we had from the first one will be in this project, but also some new things. Because Federico and I have been because we had a little mini game jam a couple days ago where we built sort of a game using these assets. This is not the game that we're working on, it just uses assets from it. It's a very different type of game, I think, from the one that we're working on. It's a very sort of silly thing. So, okay, so everyone's got this open. Basically, we're going to start by making a new scene, so that should be, you're already on an empty scene. And we're just going to start adding stuff. You can see here I'm looking at the back view. Again, that's just rotating this little gizmo guy, so we can look at stuff properly. And we have a whole prefabs folder full of different things that we can bring in here. So the first three things that we're going to drop in, the first one is the player. And this is actually very similar to the script we were writing last week when we kind of started running out of time. We were trying to get this little player guy to work. If you don't see the player in your screen here, you can double click on this to recenter the camera. So if the camera's like over here, you can double click to get back. So you can see over here, this is the player with all the stuff that makes the player work and the player script. And this is, again, similar to what we were writing last time. We're going to want to add something, because if we just play this right now, we'll just fall because there's no universe for him to exist in. So we're going to want to add the block cube prefab. So in your prefabs folder here, there's a bunch of different types of blocks. And you'll also start to notice that everything here is not textured. So one important thing that we're going to want to do before we start building too much here is we're going to want to go to Edit Snap Settings and set your snap settings to 0.5, 0.5, 0.5 instead of 111. So that's just Edit, Snap Settings, and then what you can do here is you can hold down Command on Mac or Control on Windows and drag and move this around blocking to the grid. And I don't know if you guys remember last time we were doing this, if you start with your block like off of the grid and then start dragging, it'll be locked to a different grid, which you don't want. So, make sure you spawn this block at 0, 0, 0, and then drag it down a bit. You've got something for him to stand on now. So if we play, then you can see here, he's okay. You can run around, but you can jump by hitting space. And he'll do his little run animation, his little jump animation there. So one thing we want to change here, we have this default camera. We're just going to delete it. So on Mac, that's Command Delete, and on Windows, I think it's the Delete key. I think you can also right-click and go to Delete. And then in your prefabs folder, there's a game camera that you can just drag right in to your scene. It's set up to be at a proper distance. It's kind of hard to see there because it's all gray. So maybe what we'll also do here, once we've got that camera in, we'll create, go game object, create other, whoops, directional light. So now we can actually get some, we've got some light in there, we've got some shadow, we can actually make out a shape, so that's looking a bit better. And what I'm just going to do here is spawn a few more blocks. Just so we have, like just building a little bit of a level that we can run through.
And you can spawn on the box by Control D.
Yeah, you can hit Control D or Command D on Mac to duplicate.
How do you snap in Windows?
Control, I think you hold it down on the track. And if you play this, you can run around and jump, but in the game view down here, the camera's not following you, right? So we can't actually see what's happening over here. It becomes a very hard game to play because you can't tell what the hell's going on. So if you notice at the bottom here, there's an error message. It says unassigned reference exception. The variable target of game camera has not been assigned. So what that means is game camera here has, we click on game camera and we go look at the inspector here. See there's a target field here and it's got nothing in it. So basically all we need to do here to get the camera to follow the player is just drag the player from the scene, the player that's in the scene, not the player that's in your project folder, onto this target field. So that will assign it. So now the camera will be following that transform component. So now you can run around and actually, the camera will track you. And when you fall off the end of the world, though, you just keep falling forever and ever and ever. And if anyone gets lost or stuck, let me know. Just otherwise, I'll keep going. So what you can also add, another prefab that we have already made in here is depth zone, which sounds very dramatic. Right now, it won't look very dramatic. It's just a big green box. But if you drag that into your scene, then as soon as your player hits that, he'll die. The game will wait for a little bit, and then it'll restart. And once Federico gets his hands on that, it will look different. Yeah, it'll look pretty different. How long did you spend working on this part? Like an hour? Yeah, they're pretty exciting. Anyway. So we got this. We can run around. We can fall off a cliff and die. And we've got some stuff we can jump over. So we could maybe even make like a gap here now. Okay, so maybe this is sort of like, okay, player will come over here. He'll have to jump over this gap, and if he misses, he'll fall and die, and we'll have to restart the level. Maybe we'll just put some other things over here. We can jump onto. Falls and he dies, and we try to make it. I'm not sure actually how many blocks he can jump yet, so. It's kind of dicey at 3 blocks there. Also, this is a good time to save your scene. You hit Control S or Command S, and there's already a scenes folder for you. You can open it up. Ta-da! And you can type level 1. And then just hit save. And then as you're working on your scene, you'll probably want to periodically save it. I just do this by reflex, like constantly you can see the file, then just going. So this is kind of cool, but we don't really have any enemies in this level yet. You're just kind of running and jumping over pits, which is okay, but if you go in here and find the object called gear, pull that into your scene. And I'm actually going to make a bit of space for it. This object has a script on it that renders some debug information. So you can add this stuff to your scripts where it renders lines and little spheres and stuff to get a sense of what it's actually going to do. So this shows the path that the gear will go on. And that's one of the things that you can customize in this script. So if we run it, we've got this like gear that looks kind of like a buzzsaw from like Super Meat Boy or something going back and forth. And if you touch it, you die. So you want to try and avoid it. If we look at how this gear is working, we've got this gear object here. It's got this green wireframe sphere that's just basically a trigger. It's just going to like notice when something hits it. So basically it's just waiting for the player to hit it, and then it tells the player to die. But it also has, so it has a death script on it. This is the same script that we use in the death zone object that we threw in there. Basically, whenever the player enters this thing, you'll die. So you could put this on any kind of object that you wanted to. You could put it on a box that's attached to a big blade that swings, and it would also kill the player. And this is called a move script. And it's the thing that's responsible for moving the gear back and forth. It also renders that yellow debug information. And there's a bunch of kind of parameters you can play around with here. You can customize the how far it goes basically by setting the endpoint here. So I can change, you see that yellow point is moving if I play with this endpoint slider. You can make it go up in the air, come back down. So maybe what I'll do is try and show you one way you can kind of do like a swinging blade type thing. We also have this bulge parameter, which is going to add some curve to it. So if I set that to maybe -4, let's see what happens. Oh, that's a bit too much. So maybe if I was going to do -2. So now it's more like something that actually follows like a curve. Of course, while the game is running, you can play around with these parameters and see it go different ways, right? Okay, I want to go out. And this also works on 3D space, so you can make it go into the background and do stuff, like it's bouncing into the background and coming back. So, and you can clone these gears and mess around with them, and you can have a bunch of different gears in your level that do different things. You can clone a gear but swap out the model so it looks like it's a different object, but you haven't had to write any more code. It's just using the same basic scripts. So you can also change the speed. So if we made this really, really fast, now it's Super Meat Boy, yeah. So, you know, we can find something that's maybe a bit more challenging but not impossible. Yeah, that's too easy. Let's try 8. Close. No, I can't get it. So what if we wanted to design a level that had really, really hard sort of challenges, but gave you the option of moving around the challenges if you wanted to, sort of by using exploration and maybe a different mechanic? Like, say, what if we wanted to go this way? And we wanted to make a little path for the player to go around. This is a little complicated, so I'm gonna put this here.
You've got a screen in front of you too, make it
Yeah.
Too easy.
It's not hardcore.
Yeah, it's not hardcore enough. I want to feel like I'm programming on this massive screen, even though I'm not doing any programming at all. So basically, I'm just making a detour here. It's like, okay, presumably somehow the player's gonna be able to go around this other way, and I'd have to tweak this saw path too, so it's a bit shorter. There. Probably just jump clean over it, but whatever. So if you go into the scene now, there's no way to get back there. There's nothing. You just die. But we have this other object called switch direction. We drop that in here. Pull this over. And we can duplicate this guy onto basically any point where we would want the player to be able to go around a corner. And then once you go into the game, you run here, you can hit up, and it rotates the whole view. Now you can run this way. Here you can hit down, etc. It's still hard to get over that. So you just go around cloning these guys. You don't need to rotate them or anything. They'll work fine the way they are. You can see they're using that debug rendering thing to render just a little L shape, just so you know what they are. They'd be like invisible if they didn't have this sort of extra debug stuff. So it's kind of handy to throw that on your scripts. And I think we want to center these guys maybe so that their orange dots are at the bottom there. And then there's these floating gray boxes that may come into effect later somehow. Right now they just sort of sit there. Now we can go around and totally avoid that saw. And die anyway.
You need to put them on every corner, I guess. Oh yeah, because that's
Yeah, so I've just put them on every intersection basically. There could be another way to write this script, so you just have it auto-detect situations where you could go around corners, but I figured that this might be a bit easier. So you can go around here and you're totally free from this gear saw thing, and you're like, everything's fine. Well, everything is not fine. Everything's going to get a little bit bad. So there's another object called cannon, and we can drag this guy in. Try to get him on the grid here. That might be okay. So now if we go here, we see that there's a cannon, and it fires a shot every so often. So this is something else that the player would have to dodge. It's firing in a different direction here. The player gets hit, he dies instantly. And this cannon also has a lot of different options that you can use to customize it. One of the coolest ones, maybe shoot interval. We could try that. Try cutting that in half. And then there's also this mode, enumerated type at the bottom here, where you can select rotate instead of fixed. So if we run with that, now the camera actually rotates and continues firing. Now the way I'm doing the rotation is through a third-party library. It's a free thing. It's just a script you can throw into your project, and it lets you automate that stuff. So that's just one function call to make it do that sort of jerky rotation effect.
Is it iTween?
It's iTween. Yeah. So if you're looking for the library, it's called iTween, and it's just you can just Google for it. The rotation was done using this library here. It's actually in the project. It's called iTween. It's written by this guy Bob, who Devin and I are really, really good friends with. But no, he's a good guy, and he wrote this library for free, basically. So you can just throw this in your project and then call it from anywhere you want, and make things rotate and move and stuff like that. So I think what I'm going to do here is I'm going to try duplicating some cannons and rotating them. Just see what that does. Oh, that's pretty weird. And all the cannonballs are shooting themselves.
Is there a way to group stuff in your hierarchy to clean it up a bit?
Sure, if you wanted to try and organize One way to group things is to create an empty object. So I just went up here and went to game object and went to create empty. So that created this guy here, game object. I would set it to 0, 0, 0 just so it's at a clean orientation, and then you can drag, say like let's put all our blocks into a group. Just select them all and pull them into this game object here, and then I can rename this game object like blocks or something. So now I've effectively grouped all my blocks. I can move them around as a group. I can turn them off and on as a group. So that's kind of handy for organizing. But also, if you kind of get lost in your own scene view, you can also just search for whatever you're looking for by typing into that field. So if you're like, oh, I can't find the gear, and it's like, oh, it's right there. Okay. Got it.
You can search stuff for like by script too, which is really handy.
Yeah,
If you want,
so
like all the renders or whatever.
if I wanted to find things that had the move script on it, I could actually just type move and it would find gear. If I wanted to find everything that had the death script on it, I could go in there and it would find all that stuff. In this case, it's finding something that has the name death in it and then two things that have death script on it. So what else? We want to introduce checkpoints because let's say our player actually gets around this cannon, gets over here, and then falls off this jump. That would really suck for them. So we can drag this checkpoint into the scene. This is an object that renames itself. So it changes its name based on its ID value, which is down here. So if I change the ID value to 666, which is Frederico's favorite number, then the checkpoint, we'll say checkpoint colon 666, and there'll be 666 green dots drawn on it. The reason for this is because each checkpoint needs a unique ID so we know which checkpoint to respawn the player at. So if we had one checkpoint over here and one checkpoint over here, they would need to have separate IDs. This one would be 1, and that one would be 2, and as we go through level, it would be 3, 4, 5, etc. So we can drop those in and test those as well. Got this. So I've activated this checkpoint. Right now, nothing happens when you activate a checkpoint, but we're going to change that later. So if I die here, I should be able to respawn at the checkpoint I was at. And if I jump over this one, and I don't know if I hit it or not. No, I didn't. Okay. So I got to jump while I'm like half off the block. Okay. I die. Now I respawn at this one. So if you find that your player is respawning at the wrong one, you might just have the wrong ID values. You might have two checkpoints with the same ID. And you just have to go in and change one of those ID values. And another thing kind of tied into the idea of having optional paths and exploration and stuff like that is that we could give the player some incentive or some secondary goals. So maybe our primary goal is you just have to get to the end of the level, but secondary goals maybe you have to collect some stuff. So we have a coin prefab here, capital C coin. Drag it into our scene. Doesn't look like much yet. You can decide at what height you want to place these. You could have them at this sort of Y at 0.5, so the player can just run into them to collect them. Right now, you just run into they're kind of spinning there, and you run into them, and they disappear. So you can be like, oh, I want the player to maybe have this optional path over here. Maybe there'll be like an optional challenge, or maybe it's just you want the player to go look at something over here, so you're like, oh, you entice them with money. Money that is worthless in the real world. Oh, okay. I don't know if those are like good, whatever. Blink, 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 blink. So that can kind of be one way to draw the player around. But as we're going through and we're collecting these coins, the player has no idea how many coins they've actually collected. So this might not feel particularly rewarding because they don't know what kind of progress they're making. So Yet another object in here we have is HUD. Stands for heads up display. It basically just means something that's going to be overlaid on top of the game. So let's see here, we've got a coin in the corner with a counter. So now as you run through and collect coins, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and you've got 5 coins, etc. And the way that this HUD works, it's kind of cool. It's actually like it's an empty object, kind of like that game object group that we made for the blocks before. But it's floating way over here at minus 10,000x. So the scene is like here, and this is way to the left. And the reason for that is because we have a separate camera here, and it's rendering this other scene way over there. And we want to make sure that our game objects don't get into this other scene and get rendered on the top of everything. So we've essentially set up 2 cameras. We have our game camera here somewhere. Runs a mess of stuff. The game camera has this depth parameter that's set to -1. So it renders first because it has a lower depth value than this HUD camera, which has depth 100. So you can set up all these different cameras and render a whole bunch of different things on top of each other. And the other important thing about this is this has depth only on its clear flags, which means that it won't, if I change this to skybox, that's what happens. So it's first the main camera renders, it renders the whole game with the player and everything in it. Then this other HUD camera renders, it clears the entire background to a skybox, which is blue at this point, and then it renders its stuff. So we don't want it to do that, we want it to just do depth only. Depth only means that it'll clear the depth information, which is basically information about where all these objects in 3D space are. You don't need to know what that is, but you just need to know that it works.
I have a question with that.
Sure.
So, okay, so you have click on the game camera for a second.
Mm-hmm.
So, okay, I'm just kind of confused, like how like
If
that
I
setting
change
is.
this
Yeah.
depth to 99, 100, 101. So now it's got priority over the HUD camera.
Gotcha. So there's no place where it's actually saying though, like render these 2 things together. It just does it automatically, or?
It goes through the cameras in order of depth, renders them based on the flags that are set on each of the cameras. So I could I could add another camera here, because the simplest way to explain something is to make it more complicated. So if I just create another camera, I'll put it somewhere like this. I set the depth to say 50, so in between these two, we have 1 at -1, it's going to render first, draw its stuff to the buffer. Then we've got at 100 a camera that renders just on top of that buffer without clearing stuff. So we can add this one in the middle. Right now it's clearing the background so we don't see the first camera underneath it, but if we change this to depth only, now we have 2 things superimposed at the same time. So if we tried playing the game, that would be kind of confusing because you see 2 guys and from 2 different views. So that's kind of cool. Well, you can actually, there's practical applications of this. Like you could render something way over here that has like some 2D art on some quads, on some triangles, like a map. And you're animating little points on the map, and then you're rendering that into the corner of your main game. So basically, like in World of Warcraft, there's a little map that you see in the corner of the screen. That's how they're doing it. They're setting up a separate camera. You can also get these cameras to render into textures, which is even more complicated, and then you can put them onto 3D models. So we could set the texture of the main character's hoodie to have, like a Teletubby TV screen or something. Like something that's actually animated and moving around. So there's lots of really cool effects that you can do with that.
So if say you just wanted to do something where you're like just swapping between different camera views or something, that's obviously not the way that you do that. They'd all have like the same depth and be toggling on and off or something like that.
Yeah, you could toggle them on and off. You could have one camera and you just set it to different positions that you've set up in advance.
So why is it called depth? Why isn't it called like render order or something ridiculous like that?
I think it's because kind of like the way I was thinking of it is just like almost like layers on a painting. Like this is the lowest layer, this is the lowest depth, and we go up, 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 up. Kind of like just painting over the same thing over and over again. Field of view is always fun to play around with. You get crazy fish islands and stuff, so lots of neat stuff to do with that. But in this case, all we're using it for is just this HUD, which is relatively simple. The other thing to notice here is that these coins, the way that they work, they're an empty object with, we've added a sphere collider to them so that we can, there's also a trigger to detect when the player hits it, kind of like the death stuff. We have a coin script on there that basically handles that. But then inside of them, we have these models, and they have a really simple spin script. That's what makes them spin around. And we use the exact same script over here on the gear. See, the gears model also has the spin script. You can set the axis that it spins on, so if you want it to spin like this or spin like this. So that's another thing you can reuse if you want it, like you can throw it onto something really weird. I don't know about throwing it on a player that's too weird. I threw it on like one of these blocks, maybe, let's see what happens. Okay, so there's like a spinning block, right? And then you can tweak that too if you want to make it go faster. This is like degrees per second, so 360 would be a full turn every second. Whoa, shit. And then you can also change the axis that it spins on, so it spins up, spins out. Stuff like that. So there's one more thing I'm just going to introduce, and then we're going to switch over to Federico for a bit. It's the exit. So we don't actually have a goal for our levels yet. We just run and jump off the end of the world, but this magical door that you can go into. So for now, I'm just going to put it somewhere kind of close so I can test it out right away. So I'm just going to save the scene. I'm going to go select this exit object here and go to the exit script. I'm going to type in level 2. So basically, the exit will let you set a scene that you can load. Then I'm going to make a new scene, make sure I've saved my current one. Drag in a player. Drag in the game camera. And this one blocks. Make sure it's world player. Delete this little camera. Okay, so basically we're just making a new scene with all the basic ingredients that we first started with. And also we need a directional light. Okay, so 4 things. Block, the directional light, the game camera, and the player. And we need to make sure to connect the game camera, the player to the game camera again. Now you could set it up for the game camera to automatically find the player and stuff. We haven't done that. Okay, so now we've got a basic level that's just, one block. So we could start here building a new level. One thing you could do that's also kind of useful is you could save this as a template scene, and then instead of making a new scene from scratch, just duplicate the template scene and rename it, and then start from that just to save some time. But today we're just going to save this scene as level 2. Level 3, that's a spoiler. And then we need to go to build settings. That was file, build settings. This is kind of an annoying step. But basically, we need to drag the scenes that we want to be actually seen by Unity and actually put into our final build into this build settings window. Otherwise, we can't load them, even in the editor. So we need to make sure that we drag those guys in there. And then once we go to level 1, we should be able to now get to our exit, get to the door. The door will slowly open, and we load the next level. So I don't know if you guys followed all of that, but essentially you can use this door as the objective that the player wants to get to. You can use it as a way to get to a new level and set up a whole separate thing. So I think what we're going to do is let you guys just play around with building a level for maybe 5-10 minutes. Try to make something that will take the player, maybe a couple minutes to run through. Put some challenges in there, put some checkpoints in there. Try to use these objects that are in this project. And then after that time has passed, Frederico's going to come in and, I don't know if you've noticed, but everything in this game is completely white and untextured, and it looks kind of weird.
That was the New York level.
It's an art game. We're going to make it a mainstream game with Frederico's help. He's going to come in and show us how to do a bunch of cool art stuff with that. So maybe 5-10 minutes, and then we'll.
Is there a Minecraft mod?
Not yet.
Is there a way to slightly delay the saws?
Slow. Just make them go slower, or make them pause it.
Like pause.
Not right now. We could hack that in later, but I don't think right now there's a way to actually make them you're saying once they get to the end, they stop for a bit.
Or even just offset the timer.
It means they don't start right away, or?
If I have two beside each other, and I want one to go immediately and one to go 1 second after the other one.
Oh, well, I guess the other thing you do, if you had two beside each other, you could put this one over here and have it go the opposite direction. If you wanted to, if this is the kind of effect that you were going for, I'm not sure.
No.
No, okay. It's wrong.
Two going the same direction, but one starting slightly after.
Okay. Yeah, there's no way to do that currently, but. And yeah, you want to come stand over here.
Nice.
Okay, so I guess we'll start this. So I will be hopefully quick, and so you guys will have an extra 15 minutes at least to play a bit more with the levels, and then actually add some materials and some stuff to make it look a little bit more interesting. I'm gonna go through some basic ideas of materials right now, some basic parameters and stuff, and so basically how do you create a material for an object inside Unity? So you have your project area here. You have only one material right now, which is a basic diffuse shader. So no specular, no nothing, no texture. So it's just white, just the color we set here. It could be red, but just a basic color. So we could use this basic material with another texture, and then it would actually have some more detail to it. So I'm gonna to do some examples. I'm gonna create a simple plane here and create a point light there. You guys don't need to follow this, do it on your, just pay attention to this, and then later on you can just apply these things to the level you're currently working on. So, okay, we have this really simple material right now. So the white one, the light is creating this shadow here where it's not reaching. So we're gonna use a basic wood material here and apply it to our plane. Okay, so pretty basic, a little plain with a wood texture right now. Okay, yeah, please. Yeah, this good.
Just gonna try this and see if it's too creepy. Is that better or not?
Yeah.
This is alright.
Okay. So yeah, we have a light there. It looks pretty diffuse, which it actually is. It's just a diffuse texture, a diffuse shader. So, like if we look at this wall over here, the brick wall, that's a pretty diffuse surface. There are no reflections, basically no specular. Actually, it is reflecting the environment. It is reflecting light in real world, but in Unity. To simplify things, the shaders break parameters. So we have individual controls like color, specular, reflections, transparencies, and to optimize performance. So right now we just have a diffuse texture, a diffuse shader, which is not creating any specular highlights for us or nothing. So if we wanted to make this a bit more interesting, we could simply go here to our shader and change from a diffuse one to a specular. Okay, now the only difference is we have this focus area of light here, which changes depending on the angle we're looking. So if we go to our point light and move it around, it also changes. And if I go back here and make the specular stronger, I can, so now right here is basically I'm looking at the surface and it's reflecting the surface and looking at the light. So this is specular highlights. I could tweak this shininess to make it more spread out, or really small like a glass, something that has focused specular. Something wet, for example, has normally more focused specular. Okay, cool. But this, if we look at this, the specular is pretty fake, because it's perfect. It's the same on all the surface. It's just like this sphere with a gradient on it. We could probably do something better than this. So I'm going to change the texture here to another. It's the same wood texture, color map, but it has an alpha, which Unity uses as specular. So if you look at our shader here, we have base, which would be like the color, RGB, the normal color in your Photoshop, and then glossiness. It's pulling the specular value from the alpha channel of this texture. So now if we look at our sphere here, we can see there's some kind of randomness to it, like some dirts to it. It looks a little bit more interesting. So if I pull back here our light, make it a bit stronger so we can look, see, the range. We can probably see that there's some variation on our specular. It's not a perfect white ball gradient on top of it. And to make it really obvious, I'm going to duplicate this shader and go back to so the same shader. Both are the same shaders, but just with this, one has this alpha with some variance to it, and the other doesn't have. It's like pure white. So if I apply it here, see? So this one, you see, it's like a perfect focus of light and then a gradient. And then this one breaks it up a bit, does some darts to it. So it looks way more interesting, more realistic, because not many surface would be so perfect in its specular. So okay, so we have some basic diffuse and some basic specular. And just to give just to show a little bit better how important and how much it really affects visually the specular, I'm gonna change this texture to it's a texture that just doesn't have the color, but it still has the specular in the alpha. And oops. Okay, and if you look, see, this is just specular. It has all this detail only on the specular map. So basically, you can see that between the planks of wood, I removed specular because it would probably it'd be even dirtier, so you wouldn't want like incredible specular highlights from that. And on top of the planks, it's like totally dirty, and there are some spots where you have even less light reflecting on the surface. So you can see how simple specular on top of a color map can make huge differences. So okay, I'm gonna go back to our color plus specular. Okay, so we have it here, but it still looks pretty flat. So we move around the camera, there's some interesting specular, but the surface still looks pretty flat. So I'm gonna add a normal map to it to give some surface detail. So I'm gonna go here to the shader, and notice how I'm simply I'm changing these shaders like from specular to back to diffuse, and it keeps my texture right there. It's not like resetting and I have to start all over. No, it keeps what I have already plugged in to this material. It still uses. So back to specular. Specular is back. Now I'm going to bumped specular. So there's bumped diffuse and bumped specular. Bumped diffuse would be a normal map plus color map, no specular, and bumped specular is all three. So okay, I want to bump specular. Nothing happens here. Still the same surface because I have to set up a normal map right here. So normal map. I'm going to go here and select our wood normal. Okay, now if I go over here and move the camera a bit, we can start seeing some detail on the planks. If I move the point light around, we start to notice some surface detail, almost as if it was modeled, but it's just a plane. It looks way more. It looks to have way more detail than it actually has. So it's awesome because if we had to actually model all these planks and all the little crevices and stuff, it would be like, I don't know, 100, but maybe 10,000 polygons for this, 5,000 polygons. And right now we just have like a flat plane. So so normal maps help us to give detail. Okay, so if we go back here, some basic parameters we can tweak here that are on all shaders, or like tiling. So we can make this tile a couple of times. So repeat itself a couple of times. So like 4 times. If we go down here, we have like way more. They're smaller, but they're repeated many times. And I would have to go and repeat the normal map also, because right now the normal map is still only used once throughout the whole plane. Now, say we can go closer and like far away, and it looks like this huge area of wood planks. Okay. Now, okay, I'm gonna create a simple, transparent shader. Show here, so transparent shaders, we have a bunch of them, bump to diffuse, bump specular, just diffuse, parallax, specular vertex late, and then cut out, which is something different, I'll show you in a bit. So I'm gonna create a basic transparent diffuse, which is diffuse, a basic color, but with using the alpha of the texture as transparency. So, and I'm gonna change this to this texture to, where is it? Here, brightness example. Create a new plane. Put it up a bit. There you go. So, what this is so a plane with a diffuse the diffuse is totally white, and the alpha channel has these values. Where you see 100%, it's written 100% in white. So pure white is opaque. 50%, so gray, 50% gray, is middle ground between totally opaque and totally transparent. And then here, it's really hard to see, but there's like a 10% over here, just so you have an idea. And here's a gradient from going to white, from white to black. So an idea of how transparency works in Unity, okay? And this is inside the alpha channel of the texture of your file. Because some softwares like Maya and other 3D packages, you can have a separate texture file that is just the alpha map. Black and white texture file. But Unity, it uses the alpha in the texture to pick up speculars and transparency. So just something to keep in mind. Which was weird because I was used to using Maya, so I had to adapt. But yeah, it's how Unity uses to optimize stuff. If you look over here, there's like this little border of texture over here, which is because there's texture until the limit of the file over here, and Unity's trying to repeat the texture maybe, so it's doing some glitch here. So to fix this, we'll go into the texture folder in our brightness example file, which is just a texture file. And in wrap mode, it's repeat here. So if I, for example, if I placed in our shader, in our transparent shader, the tiling here to 4, see, it would repeat itself, okay? But I don't want to have since I'm not going to repeat, I don't want to have these little glitches on the edges happen. So I'm just going to go to our texture, and in the inspector, put clamp, and I'll apply. So I'll have to go back to our shader, remove all those tilings I made, and now you see there's no more glitches on the edges, because it's not trying to tile the texture around. So this is something you might go with, like if you're trying to do like grass, where it's like transparent on planes and stuff, you might have this kind of problem. So remember to check out like the wrap mode on each texture. And here, this is the same for specular. So 100% white is full specular, until black is no specular. So if I use this, if I get this transparent shader and turn it into a diffuse, a specular shader, and just to make it more obvious, I'm gonna put the main color here of the shader to black, so we can see. So now we're only seeing specular again. You see, there's a light, which is making these specular reflections, but where's black on the texture, no specular happens, okay? And where there's some kind of information, like at more than 1% of white, there is specular going on. So specular now and transparency work similar in Unity. Okay, now how about if we wanted to create some reflective shaders, something a little bit more interesting? We could go down here, go to reflective, and I could just create a basic diffuse reflective shader. So I'm going to choose our wood texture again, and whoa, something really crazy happened. What's going on here? Since we have no cube map assigned for a reflection, it's just using like a gray overall, and this is basically how the specular or the alpha channel of this texture looks like. This is because it's 100% being shown right now. But we don't want that to happen, so we have to create a cube map to use as a reflection here. So how do we create a cube map to use as a reflection? Which are basically 6 images that our object is gonna reflect. I pulled some images from Google, really basic images like of environments over here. and just show how simple it is to create these reflection maps, like at least for a prototype. Then later you can work a little bit more on them. I just made them tileable on right and left on X. I made them tileable because they are going to be wrapped around a cube, so you don't see a huge seam. They need to be tiled, at least on the X. I gave some extra space for like on the height, like for sky and for the bottom, because this is going to be wrapped around the cube. And what's more important is basically what you're seeing on the near the horizon. So that's where you need to have all your detail happening, basically near the horizon. So basically they're just PNGs, JPEGs, whatever, just some textures. Inside Unity, you grab them in the inspector, texture type, go to, where is it? Reflection. Then mapping, I'm gonna choose cylindrical because it works best for here. Then later you guys can try out, like with the same texture, try out these different things. I found out cylindrical being the best one from like just a simple texture. So cylindrical, and I go down here and apply. Unity is going to think for a bit, and bam! Now I have this reflection over here. Okay, so this is applied on a sphere, and we can see that on the poles, like on the point of the sphere, on the top and on the bottom, is where like the texture is meeting and being a little bit strange. So the best would be to leave it, don't put much detail there, like try to make like a solid color or something so it's not like crazy lines meeting there. But yeah, and worry about the horizon line is where you actually see more stuff. So cool, we have a cube map now created inside Unity from a simple picture I got from Google Maps. The only thing I did is make it tileable on X. So now I'm going back to my shader. It's not transparent anymore, it's reflective. And here now on QMap, I'm going to select our reflection 0, 1. So now, if I move around, we see some reflections happening. So these black things that are appearing are part of the environment, like those mountains that were on the texture. So, but a plane is not the best thing to use to look at this. So I'm just going to create a huge sphere. It's better, easier to see this effect. So now we can see there's some reflection happening, and we are using the specular from the wood. Okay, but this is like way too much. It's too obvious. It's weird. So we're going to go here and on reflection color, we can lower this a bit until it's black. There's no reflection. So I'll probably put like, I don't know, 30, 40% here, something around that. So there is some reflection, but it's not so obvious. Okay, but let's put some color back on. So the texture was already there. I'm just going to put back the main color. So, but see that we don't see much of the color because the reflection is still maybe a bit too strong. So we can lower the reflection even more. And of course, it's not being lit properly, so that's not going to help. So yeah, now if we go up here, see, this texture obviously is not made to be used on a sphere, so some weird stuff is happening here. But you can see that where the light meets this object, we don't see much of the reflection. We see most of the reflection on shadows, because is where the sphere is darker. So yeah, we have this nice reflective effect. And we could even complete this even more and go to reflective, bumped specular, put our normal map back here, our wood normal map. And now we have like normal maps happening for like a detail on the surface. We have the specular with some interesting texture there, breaking it up a bit. And then we have like the reflection, which, remember, the reflection uses the specular texture to know how much it's going to be applied to the surface. So yeah, it's breaking up. If we wanted to create a perfect chrome ball, we would have to remove the texture, maybe remove our normal map again also, and then we could kind of have like a chrome ball kind of thing, where it's like really really perfect surface with not much going on. It gets a nice reflection on it. So glasses and what else could it be used? Water could have this, but maybe with a normal map with some simulating some waves that could have some interesting effect. Yeah. Okay. So now the same way we use this texture to create these cube maps and use them on materials, we can use it as a skybox. So we're gonna go here, create a new material, create material, so skybox. Go here to shader, go render effects, skybox cubed. So it's gonna use our already created cube box as a cube map as a reflective skybox. So I'm going to go here, reflection, and apply it to the scene. So edit, render settings, and so edit, render settings, and it opens this tab here on the inspector where you can go skybox material. So click here, click skybox. Now we have the same texture we used to reflect applied as a skybox. So this looks already a little bit more interesting. We could tweak this a bit, tweak the tint color to make it darker or lighter. You could play around with it. You could even play with color if you wanted to use the same texture, but I wanted it to be red or whatever. So you can play around with it. I'm going to leave it here. So now, if you look, it seems like this sphere is reflecting the skybox, which is interesting, which is cool. Also, really quick, here in the render settings, there's also fog, which we can play around with. If you don't have a skybox material set, if you don't have, or you see that we set the fog color to red, but the background is still gray. And the same happens with the skybox, it's not affected at all. So what we would have, if we wanted the fog to affect the background, we would have to actually create a surface for it, like maybe a plane, which is like far away in the background. And then there we might apply some texture to it to look like a background. But yeah, that would be a way to get fog working on the background also. But it doesn't work on Skybox. And if you see, I want to get closer to the camera, the fog gets weaker. And we can change these parameters here, play around with the density. And change this fog mode, which changes how fast it goes into 100%, or even go to linear, which you can then play where the fog starts and where the fog ends, according to the camera. So you have a little bit more control. So here's something else to add a little bit more detail to your scene. For example, an underground scene could have underwater scene could have like some blue on it, so you know, to simulate underwater kind of environment. So yeah, there's also this where you can play around with to add a little bit more detail to your scene. Now I'm going to give a quick overview of the new particle system. I'm going to try to be really fast because I'm kind of late already. So I'm going to delete these things. So okay, how do you create the new particle system? Basically, go here, create particle system, and we have this. This is how all particle systems will start off. Just some basic spheres coming out of it. They're not actually spheres, they're like just a texture on sprites. Yeah. So if we go to our inspector, here we can play a bit with the parameters. And in this, the first one, there are several things we can tweak. Like the duration, what this duration means is, if it's set to looping, it will run for 5 seconds and then reset the particle system and start spawning again. But the particles that are already in space won't get deleted just because it stopped, the duration stopped. This is basically the duration of the emitter, not of particles. So this you can, it doesn't make much sense if you're just like spawning random particles all the time, but when you go to emission and start playing instead of just random particles, creating bursts of particle, so like bursts at 0, bursts of particle at 2 seconds. So then you start really seeing the difference when, so it starts, and then it happens again, and then it's going to wait for about 3.5 seconds, and then starts again. So this is the duration. So if you're just making a loop, like a smoke, just a sparkle with smoke or something like that, you don't have to worry much about this. So looping, yeah, it's gonna, when it ends, it's gonna start again. If you want it just to run for like 5 seconds, you remove it, and after 5 seconds, it's gonna stop. Then a couple of more parameters which you guys can play around, which are pretty obvious. But then I wanted to use, just to show that now this new particle system uses gradients and curves to control things. So for here, start color, or better, even better, I'm gonna do color over lifetime. So I'm gonna activate it. I'm just gonna check here, so start lifetime, so it's set to 5, so that means that the particles will last for 5 seconds. It's basically their life. I'm gonna go back here and make it keep spawning like all the time, no bursts, so we can see this effect better. And on color here, I'm gonna click, and we get this gradient editor. On the top is alpha, so when you click on these little things, it opens the alpha here. So for example, I could make, on the right here, which is the end of the lifetime, I could remove the alpha, and particles would start to fade out. Okay? And I can, on the bottom is actually the color. So I can make, so I'm gonna go back and not make them fade out, so you can see. And the color, I'm gonna make like, they start red, and they become white when they're dying, when they're going. So it's basically using this gradient over the amount of life you set for the particles. And you can add more colors over here, make something really crazy, really colorful, a rainbow. Yeah, and basically the particles will follow their lifetime, their color is gonna follow that gradient through their lifetime. We could have random between 2 gradients. So basically we could have, so one that is, crazy colorful, and one that's pure white. So at start the particle is going to choose, I'm going to choose this ramp, this crazy colorful ramp, or just the white one. So yeah, you can have some randomness to it. Then I'm going to change here size by speed. So I applied here. I'm going to open up over here. So this is the curve editor for the life. So basically, so 0 is the initial, the birth of the particle. 1 is when it's dying. And then here I can tweak it. I can make new points by double clicking. So I can make their size like decrease and then grow again and then disappear. So this is interesting. And this graph is going to use the start size as reference. So if we make them bigger here, it's going to use that as a reference, this value here as a reference. Okay. So now you see